I'm Christopher Hope, chopper to my friends, the Telegraph's chief political correspondent, and this is Chopper's Politics, live from the Conservative Party conference.
Hey!
Please sound like you're enjoying yourselves here. Yesterday, I made the foolish decision to run the London Marathon, so I'll level with you listeners, I'm a bit worse for wear. I've got a few blisters. That's nothing compared to what my next guest once endured on a popular reality TV show. The one you know as I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Yes, my guest today is, of course, Nadine Dorries, until recently the mental health minister, over a period when her brief was firmly in the spotlight. And of the latest PM's reshuffle, she's now the culture secretary. It's a role she'll no doubt embrace with gusto, considering that her other job she managed to squeeze in is as a best-selling author. Nadine Dorries, culture secretary and MP for Mid-Bedfordshire, welcome to Chopper's Politics.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you here. Were you surprised we made culture secretary?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
So when you went in and you were on the door, you did this, didn't you? Well, what did you, when you got through the black door, what did he say?
So I was surprised because I'm kind of, my age. I just thought that, to get this role, you need to be somebody young and cool and trendy, and I just didn't expect to get it. So when he offered me the job, I was I was in shock.
Yeah.
I think it took 10 minutes or so before it actually sunk in what had just happened.
Yeah, because he sort of brought you in, didn't he, to the government in a way which the other leaders hadn't done, had they? Because you were a bit of a pain up the bum, weren't you, frankly?
I was, yeah.
I mean, you called David Cameron and George Osborne arrogant posh boys. You annoyed the whips by going on that programme we mentioned just then. You were sure that
but
even...
whoa. So that actually wasn't true.
Okay.
So I very much did tell the chief whip what I was doing. And he actually came up to me and apologised when it all died down and went, I'm so sorry, but I didn't say that. He actually said from his beach bed in the Bahamas that he didn't know where I was, that I didn't have his permission. So, it was recess. I missed no government votes.
No.
It was... Before I went, it was all decided. So none of that, but, I realised at the time that the party decision was to put out a different story but there you go. That's politics.
Because they were about the discipline at the time, weren't they, in a coalition government, no majority.
Yeah, and UKIP were chopping at the heels, and yeah.
But you're a lesson, aren't you, in how people forgive, don't they? I mean, you can be a bit of a rebel, and then you find yourself in government, like Boris Johnson.
I think we find ourselves sometimes in unique circumstances and unique times, don't we? And... Yeah. So...
Why do you think your appointment was so criticised by so many in the arts?
It's snobbishness, wasn't it? A total, pure, left-wing snobbery.
Was it?
And actually, that really speaks to what it helped me. That kind of blowback of left-wing snobbishness and elitism really helped me to form my ethos in the very first days as to what I wanted to achieve in this role. Because, those people who were criticising me, if you look at the arts today, I was born in a street called Breck Road in Liverpool, which I believe, I was told, has the only second Greg outlet in the country, which is in possibly the most socially deprived ward in the UK. And people I went to school with, from my background, I borrowed shoes to go to school, and people I went to school with who were doing exactly the same thing. One of them went on to be Cher's music producer. Another one went on to be quite a very well-known television announcer. I'm just going to take my earring off because I realise it's going to bang. Yeah. Went on to be a very well-known TV broadcaster. Yeah. People from my background wrote books, wrote theatre plays, and did really well. If you want to do that today, you need a double-barrelled name, and you need to have gone to a private or a public school, or your mum needs to know someone, or your dad needs to know someone, or you need to have a connection with the BBC. And what really infuriated me was that all these people who were criticising me were those people. Those people who'd found themselves where they were through a privileged background and through nepotism and a whole other host of reasons rolled in. So it kind of really helped me to decide what I want to achieve, is that I want the arts and culture and the BBC and other organisations and journalism for there to be a pathway from my background, from my working class roots, into that sector, because that pathway has completely disappeared. And to me, that's what levelling up is about. Levelling up isn't about regional growth figures. It's not about connectivity. It's about none of that. It's about people. And the people it's about the most are people who come from a background like mine, who want to be the next Grand Slam champion but can't afford private tennis lessons, who want to be the next Daisy Edgar-Jones but their mum or dad aren't the head of entertainment at Sky, or they want to be Benedict Cumberbatch but they don't go to a private school. I want to go back to those kids and find them a pathway into the industry that I now, amazingly,
and how do you get that pathway? Do you ask maybe big corporations not to worry about gender, but look at background?
Exactly.
Is that one
idea? So, in an organisation like the BBC, which I think is a beacon for the world, actually, not just the UK, but in all that it does, and its drama, its news reporting, and everything that it does, they have focused on, they have a kind of group think, and their group think excludes working class backgrounds. And so for me, if the BBC...
And from the south too, you think? And from the north,
very much so. Very much so. Northwest, northeast, Yorkshire, I mean, if you've got a regional accent in the BBC, it doesn't go down particularly well. And so, they talk about lots to do with diversity, but they don't talk about kids from working class backgrounds, and that's got to change. And I want to see from organisations like the BBC what they're going to do to change and what they're going to do.
Is that a quotas issue? So you bring in a certain number of people from the working class areas?
No, it's not about quotas. It's just about having a more fair approach and a less elitist and a less snobbish approach as to who works for you, and to outreaching, reaching out to those communities to find that talent, because our streets, our schools in those communities are bursting with talent, just talent that's never realised.
But bosses hire people like them, don't they?
So that's so the mantra says, but it has to change.
Now you're interesting because you produce culture that people pay for, don't you? You're a novelist.
Yeah, 2.4 million copies of my books I think I've sold.
It's pretty good.
So, in fact, that was before lockdown. It's probably more now.
Are you writing each morning like you were when you were mental health minister?
No, sadly, that's gone.
That's gone.
Fortunately, though, as you know, I was a prolific writer, and I think there's 1 3/4 books already banked with my publishers. So I'm going to just take a little back seat for a while now.
It's incredible. Is there a snobbery towards your books? The fact you produce popular fiction which sells by the million.
Yeah. So, and that's where I saw it, people writing about my books. And I just thought, you're actually insulting 2.4 million people.
Million people?
Critics, yeah. By criticising my writing.
Yeah. Any chance of a film being made of one of them?
Oh, I don't know. I think my publishers would like that.
Yeah, that's an autobiography of a mum of 3, born in Breck Road,
no,
becomes a cabinet minister.
Ever. I'll never write a book about politics, and I'll never write an autobiography.
You're often called Mad Nad in some headlines. Do you hate that?
So that is, again, a very sexist.
Sexist?
Very, very. It's just easy, isn't it? Mad Nad, so easy. Just so easy. And they'll do it in other ways about other women too. And I find that something about the media, I'm afraid, which is pretty appalling. And it's something the media indulge in, because if you're a journalist and you want a quick headline, and why not do that? But, having been Minister of State for Mental Health for 2 years, I know how badly the mental health sector think of those newspapers and those journalists who write those kind of headlines, because what they are doing, I'm not sure you're guilty of this, Chris, but what they are doing actually is disparaging and trivialising those people who really do suffer from mental health illness.
Using the word mad, you mean?
Yeah. It's just wrong, and it shouldn't. And in fact, I don't think newspapers actually do it now. I've spoken to a few editors recently. They've cringed at the idea that any of their journalists would. I mean, literally cringed. And in fact, I probably shouldn't say this, but a journalist just rang me recently and apologised for someone. They'd actually written that.
It's probably because you're not conforming to the stereotype of a normal.
Yeah, and
traditional.
That's it.
That's your problem. Yeah. Not a problem so much.
Yeah.
That's why you're called it. Probably.
Yeah, I'm not
unpredictable, maybe.
So yeah, I think there's this kind of think that if you're a politician, you fit into this certain mould, that you're this kind of person, you came from this background, you think these things. I'm not going to criticise organisations for having a group think and being part of this groupthink myself in politics. I am different. I come from a different background than most people in politics, but I'm not ashamed of that. And I'm not going to be somebody else because I'm not going to pretend I went to a posh school. I'm not going to pretend that I had a different background to how I.
Who's your mentor in this game of politics?
It's always been Boris.
Has it?
Yeah, he's always been a bit different too.
Yeah, and you're like Boris, and you see that in yourself, do you?
No, I don't see. There's no way I could be a prime minister. But somebody like Boris who's done it differently gives you the confidence to be yourself in politics.
Do you think you've been underrated by colleagues in the party?
Who?
You.
Oh, I have no idea how. I've got lots of friends in the party. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Whether I'm rated or not.
Yeah.
I see. That's another thing. You see. Politicians have a big ego, so they know exactly how everybody thinks about them. I don't care.
No goodness. You said that you talk about the issue of public schools and private schools. I mean, there's a problem, isn't it, in the government when you have 2/3 of people going to private schools in the cabinet, whatever the number is. I mean, the BBC and others might say, put your own house in order before telling us what to do with our hiring policy.
So.
How do you react to that?
So, well, interestingly, actually, so I don't, in terms of. Well, I don't. So it's perceived as I've got this kind of, this. I don't know what you'd call it. That I'm against private schools or public schools. No, I'm absolutely not. Absolutely not in any way whatsoever. And if you've been to a private school or public school and you do well, and you can get the jobs, get the jobs. Just don't get all the jobs, and don't just go and get all the jobs in the BBC. Or in any industry, don't go and get all the high-paid jobs. Those industries should be looking to have a mix, a diverse mix. Because if you're only taking people from one kind of background, you end up in that groupthink scenario yourself.
The things you can do, you can step up the appointing of working-class people onto the boards of public bodies, can't you?
Oh, certainly.
Which Oliver Dowden was looking at doing before he was moved on. Is that, will you carry on with that?
So,
will you turbo that?
All I will be looking for is fairness of representation across those arm-led bodies.
What does that mean? A couple, 2 or 3 from a blue wall
No,
seat?
no. I'll just be looking at the backgrounds of individuals. It just won't be the case, as I've said, not all the jobs. It won't be the case that every person who fills the job comes from a certain type of background.
Do you worry that too much of the arts budget is siphoned towards the southeast?
Definitely. Very much so.
But it just gets drawn in, doesn't it?
Well,
That's
in
where
the middle
the
of a spending review and things might be different going forward.
Well, how? Well, what's your department's pitch into the spending review?
So, I've spoken to organisations, I've asked them how much of their budget, because people might not realise, but we have a delivery arm, which is our arm-length body, so we don't spend the money, others spend it for us. And I've been asking some of these organisations how much of that budget is spent in London and how much is spent in the rest of the country. And it's bizarre because, some of them, 60% is spent in London, 40% across the entire UK. So 60% is spent on 6 million people and 40% on 59 million people.
It's because they're based there, isn't it?
But that's not right. It's
so,
just
so,
not
you,
right.
so you want to...
And that is why kids from Yorkshire and the North East and don't get the access that they should have to follow careers that could be just right for them, because not enough is being done out in the regions to find those kids, to support those kids, to run the programmes.
Do you want to move arts bodies or museums wholesale out of London into the north? Is that
we've got plenty of museums. We've got 5 museums in Liverpool.
Yeah.
So we've got plenty of museums across the country. It's more about the individual programmes, like the announcement that we've just made on the 22 million to refurbish tennis courts across the UK in those deprived areas. So if there are any potential Grand Slam champions or Wimbledon champions out there, we can inspire them so that they can aspire to be those people. So it's more about getting the money spent on the ground, in theatre schools, with the museums. I always quote this. I love theatre, but why would somebody from my background even know about theatre? Because someone from my background now would not go into a theatre. And the reason why I love theatre was because I was taken to the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool when I was 11 years old by a charity, and it was to see Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. And I remember it to this day. I can even see in my mind the stage and the people on the stage. And that started my love of the theatre. So I just want other kids to have that opportunity that I had and maybe they will decide, I want to be on that stage. I want to be one of those people. So that's where I want to see the money being spent.
Is the government winning the culture wars? I mean,
So-
do you even accept that term, culture wars? 'Cause it's coined by the left, isn't it, to describe policy?
I don't. So, again, I've seen that written a lot in the newspapers, and I don't want to go to war with anybody.
No.
I really don't want to go to war. But where it's quoted is with my relationship with the BBC, that I'm going to go to war with the BBC and have a culture war with the BBC. And that's not the case. I don't want to go to war. But what I want to do is to have constructive dialogue
Yeah,
with the BBC. How are you going to change?
yeah.
You know, I don't want to go to war with you.
No.
But come and tell me, how are you going to change?
You have said your days as the voice of the Islington left are numbered, haven't you?
Very much so.
That's a bit of a war, isn't it?
No,
No?
it's not. It's about recognising.
And that's imminent, is it? The fee you're talking about is 2022 to 2027, isn't it? Will it be a generous settlement? That's shortly to be announced.
Oh, you know.
You're amongst
I can't
friends here. They won't tell
say.
anybody.
I couldn't possibly say.
But what was your method? You said if we give you this generous settlement, then you must
No.
hire more working class.
There were no words which began or ended in generous or settlement. So no, we're having a discussion about how the BBC can become more representative of the people. It's the British Broadcasting Corporation. How it can be more representative of the people who pay the licence fee, and how it can be more accessible to people from all backgrounds, not just people who know their mum and dad work there, and how it can become, once again, that beacon for everybody. It's about impartiality, and it's about access, and it's about groupthink, and those things need to change.
So you think the BBC does have an impartiality problem, do you?
I think even the BBC have admitted themselves they've got an impartiality problem.
And they must. Is it about who they hire? You saw Jess Brammer being hired as the head of news there. She made some intemperate tweets, didn't she?
People say she's head of news. She's actually quite a way down the chain.
Is she?
So yeah, but yes, you do, and it's that I keep using the words groupthink. It's like this. It just is. It's just the way, I suppose, where people have come up through the BBC. They all come from a similar background. They all are of a certain political bias. They all think the same and talk the same, and that's what's got to be changed.
Would you pay the licence fee if it was voluntary?
Oh, gosh. Well, do you know, so, blimey, so here's another thing, actually.
It's a yes or no question.
Well, here's why. I'm trying to remember when I last watched a BBC programme, and here's the reason why. So, I've got young adults in my house who watch now Netflix and Amazon Prime, and the BBC is also now in a very much more competitive environment. So how it operates and who it broadcasts to has changed. And so, if not for any other reason, the BBC needs to change because the environment it's working in is changing rapidly. So I'm trying to think, when was the last time we watched a main news channel in our house? And it was actually strictly on Saturday night, so it's just come to me. And I love a bit of Corrie, so, ITV. But I'm trying to think, so I watched the BBC on Saturday night, so I would, because I was just thinking.
You'd pay the licence fee for Strictly?
So, yeah.
140
I could
quid
just
a year.
download Strictly, yeah.
You're going to privatise Channel 4?
Well, as I said, discussions are happening around the future of Channel 4. Channel 4 is in a good place at the moment, but if Channel 4 wants to grow and it wants to be successful, then it needs to change as also. And one of the obvious ways of doing that is for Channel 4 to be privatised.
Yeah. And where do you sit with the idea of who chairs Ofcom next? The editor of the Daily Mail, the former editor of the Daily Mail.
So you want me to tell you who is going to be the next chair of Ofcom?
Tell your friends, don't tell me. Tell these people deserve to hear the answers.
Couldn't possibly comment.
It'd be quite fun though, Paul Dacre, wouldn't it? I mean, it would stir up the hornet's nest, wouldn't it, maybe?
I said I couldn't possibly comment.
You once attacked comedians as being left-wing snowflakes for killing...
Who?
You did.
Attacked who?
Comedians as left-wing snowflakes for killing comedy.
No, I think at the time I was attacking the people who are attacking comedians. There's a thing about politically correct speech.
Yes, you can't bear it, can you?
It's not I can't bear politically correct speech, but I mean, when it comes to... And I think, actually, since I made that comment, comedians themselves are now saying, you know,
we can't say anything.
We can't say anything now. We can't... So actually, since I made that comment, comedians are now making it themselves. So, you know, I just got there first.
Yeah. And in your area, you look after the national... Well, you have policy over areas which impact on the national trust. Do you think is there a loss of confidence in some of our big institutions about dealing with key issues that they get worried about, like... you know, this colonialism and slavery report at National Trust has caused a bit of a row amongst certainly our readers at Telegraph.
Yeah. So you're talking about the tearing down the statues.
Yes, this kind of nervousness, isn't it, about our past?
Well, you know, we should not be nervous about our past. We should not be embarrassed by it. We should not be afraid of it. We should just recognise it, acknowledge it, and learn from it. If we start tearing down statues and removing courses and removing parts of our heritage and our culture, how do we learn moving forward?
Now, a big part of what you do is broadband, and that's the kind of back of the book stuff which really matters. When can you get fibre to every person in this country?
So, you know, so it's where were we just in 2018? 2019, 5% of the country were covered in gigabit broadband. It's now we passed the 50% mark just last week, I believe, and we're hoping to get to. I think the official target is 85%. Within a couple of years, we're hoping to get to 100%. But, you know, it's as fast as we can get shovels in the ground. It's as fast as we can get diggers out there. It's as fast as we can get the cables laid. It's moving fast.
It is vital now. It's basically a utility, isn't it?
It's actually the bedrock of the future of the UK's economy.
Yeah. Everything
depends on that gigabit broadband and getting those cables in the ground. But, you know, I held a round table with, you know, BT, Openreach, GigaClear, Cityfire, all of them last week, and everyone's putting their shoulders to the wheel, and everyone's going as fast as they can. And the fact that we've passed the 50% mark just last week shows how well it's going.
Yeah, and your online harms bill is going through. You're happy with the way that will take on these big internet giants in terms of the way they can...
So it's about getting a balance.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to see children. There needs to be more work done. I want to see greater protection of children and young people. And that balance, while at the same time recognising freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So, you know, freedom of speech is, you know, I mean, we can't erode freedom of speech, but we also need to protect children. And trying to carve out some method, some kind of legal way in the online harm bill that protects children without harming freedom of speech is a place I'm trying to get to. It's incredibly difficult, but we've got to get there.
How do you deal with abuse online?
Oh, God, I get tons of it. You know, well, it's not just, you know, online abuse. It's just some pretty nasty stuff that comes in the post, some pretty awful death threats. I had a stalker for years. It's just, you know, the stuff now. If my daughters said to me, should we go into politics, I'd probably say no, don't. Because
it's sad.
Some of it's really horrendous. And, you know, we're in a funny situation at the moment because I don't know if you heard what Angela Rayner said at the Labour conference last week about us all being scum and what have you. We have a responsibility as politicians to try and stop it. And I think one of our problems is there is a very nasty streak running through the left, and it impacts on Labour women as well. You know, Rosie Duffield wasn't even able to go to Labour's conference last week. A journalist, Laura Kunsberg, wasn't able to go to Labour's party. And I think, sadly, Angela Rayner's comments last week and Keir Starmer's weakness and inability to do something about that and to close that down means that it normalises this unpleasant, nasty language. And it encourages this kind of attack, particularly on female MPs. And I really felt that, you know, those comments by Angela needed to be shut down last week. Because
well, they weren't, were they?
It wasn't, and all it does is it keeps that unpleasantness rolling on, and it all, you know, the pathway leads straight back to this very nasty thread that runs through the left at the moment.
Is it because the left is always punching up at the Tories, and the Tories, because of your position in power, means you have to take it? Is that how it's seen?
No. Because throughout history, the Tories have been in power much longer than Labour. You know, I don't know what the actual year count is now, but much longer. It came with Corbyn.
Yeah.
It arrived with Corbyn. It grew under Corbyn. I remember speaking to female Labour MPs and male Labour MPs who were terrified, who were having the most hideous attacks. And it's continuing. Keir Starmer is simply not strong enough or capable enough to shut down that nastiness on the left. And he proved that last week by not stopping Angela Rayner's comments, doing nothing to criticise those comments. And I'm afraid it's going to continue. This nastiness, this online hate, these attacks from trolls, they're just going to continue. Thankfully, the Prime Minister does not condone it. He does condemn it. Keir Starmer had a responsibility to condemn Angela Rayner's comments, and he failed to take it.
Well, he said he talked to her.
Well, he needed to have that conversation publicly.
Yeah. I've got some quick questions before we go to our audience. Who should be the next James Bond? Should it be a woman?
No, it shouldn't be a woman. Why do people think that when a man gets tired of a certain pair of shoes, maybe a woman should fill them? You know, no, let's create a whole new role for a woman who can be her own, you know,
yes.
Create a role for herself. But no, I think we need more of the same.
Favourite author who isn't you?
Oh, God. There's loads of them. So I think what I've just finished is the Forsyth Saga. And his name escapes me.
Yeah.
He won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
I can't think who it is.
Was it
Anyway.
Grisham? Anyway, so at the moment he's my favourite.
Good.
But my favourite childhood author, which is very un-PC, was Enid Blyton. She started my love of books.
Do you agree with censoring some of her language from the past or not?
No.
Leave it all in there.
Let's leave it.
It's quite offensive to modern eyes.
So leave it, because that's our heritage. You know, people don't have to buy it; they don't have to read
Perhaps
it.
put a sticker in the front saying you might find this offensive.
Yeah, exactly. And let people choose what they want to read.
Yeah, BBC or ITV?
Oh, don't ask me that. I can't possibly say.
GB News or GBBO? That's a great British Bake Off.
Well, we do watch GBBO all the time.
Yeah. Who's going to win Strictly? Given you watched on Saturday.
Oh, I can't possibly say because I just curse it.
Milk first or last in your tea?
So last. Tea first, then milk.
Cream first or jam first on scones?
Oh, this row happened in our house just a couple of weeks ago. So for me, it's jam and cream on top.
Okay. McDonald's or KFC?
Definitely KFC.
KFC. Wine or beer?
Wine.
Or gin?
Wine.
Wine. And I'm going to ask this question. Do you have a secret crush on Boris Johnson?
I'm 65 next birthday. I don't have a crush on anyone.
Any questions? Right, where's the microphone? Pause. Where's my... over here. In the back there, please. Thank you. You say you are, sir, before you say speak. Thank you.
Hi there. Hi, Nadine. Councillor Ed Gretton from Wimbledon.
Hello.
Hi there. How can we get the National Trust to fly our country's flag with pride at every one of its sites?
Yeah, it's work in progress.
Are you talking to them?
Will be. I've only been in the job 2 weeks. I haven't yet, but it is work in progress.
Fantastic.
Question here. Yeah. Thank you. Lou.
Thank you. Malcolm Dunn from Whittam. Talked quite a lot about culture, much less about sport. I wondered whether you think government has a major role to play in sport, and if so, what do you give us some of your priorities, please?
So my priorities at the moment are the Commonwealth Games next year, which comes under my department, and that's going to be huge. So yeah, I do think government has a very important role to play in sport, not least the £22 million we've just given to refurbish park tennis courts across the UK, and that we're hosting the Commonwealth Games next year. So yeah, we have a lot going, and we hosted the amazing Olympic Games, which is part of our past. So yeah, a huge role to play.
What do you think when you saw how the gold medalist Bess Schreiber had to crowdfund herself to get to the Olympics when her male counterpart didn't have to?
Yeah, that's, well, again, you know, I've only been in the job 2 weeks, and that's something we haven't had time to talk about yet, but they're one of the issues we need to look at.
Yeah.
You know, if we've got budding athletes and people who are at Olympic medal standard who need to get up there to show us how they can perform, we need to be doing something to support them.
Next question.
Hello, Mr. Peach. How are you?
Hi, John Peach, Peterborough.
Hello.
You touched on making the BBC more representative of Britain, but how are we, as we're at the Conservative Party conference, how are we going to stop the BBC being so left-wing and anti-conservative?
Well, that's the impartiality question.
That's quite an unbiased question.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think I covered that, John. It's that access, that where they fail is on impartiality. You call it left-wing bias, I call it a lack of impartiality. I think the BBC themselves have probably sat down and thought to themselves, oh yeah, we do have a bit of a problem. And it's on access as well. There's a lot for the BBC to address, and they're the discussions that we're having at the moment. I'm having those discussions with their chairman and their CEO, and they'll be ongoing. But the BBC has to change. You know, I've had, over the years, I held a debate about the BBC in 2011 with Mark Thompson coming to see me at the time. And that was because at that time, you did not hear a female voice on Radio 4 after 6:30 in the morning at any time during the day. The BBC has always been behind the curve on these issues. Now, there's this thing like tokenism. You know, I'm sure over the years they've said, oh yes, we'll do a bit of this and we'll do a bit of that. But the days for tokenism are over. Real change has to happen, and that's what I'm here to make sure does happen.
Are you going to tie those demands to this licence fee settlement? I mean,
So, you know, it just so happens that there's a lot going on at the moment, yeah.
So you are?
So I can't possibly say that, but we do have a lot going on to talk about.
Yeah, gentleman here.
Hi there, Gordon Robertson from Edinburgh. Achieving change is very difficult, I understand that, but things like the subscription service for BBC and privatising Channel 4, big, huge obstacles in the way. Supporters, though, we get weary if these obstacles are not overcome.
Yeah.
So some of them, please, can we achieve them?
Yeah, well, I was weary myself until 2 weeks ago. So, no, I really get it. I absolutely get it. But you'd be amazed how many arguments you can be given and how many scenarios as to why what you want to achieve can't be achieved. But I think the important thing is to just keep telling people to go away and come back and tell you how you can achieve it, not how you can't.
At the back there.
Oh, hi there, Kitty Donaldson from Bloomberg. I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at it yet, but I was wondering whether you'd examine the NVIDIA takeover of ARM and whether you might let that go ahead.
So I can't comment on that, I'm afraid. And I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail yet.
OK. Question on the front here, this lady here in the denim jacket.
Hi there, Jo Edwards from Brighton. You spoke really movingly, Nadine, about your upbringing and coming from quite a tough background. And I was reminded of a story, actually a rival publication, not the Telegraph, published about 6 weeks ago about a teenage ballerina with autism from one of the toughest housing estates in Leeds, who got a place to study at a ballet school, very talented ballerina. But her single-parent mother worked in the NHS, couldn't afford the £30,000 a year for 3 years' fees. And so because this story was in the media, there was crowdfunding and £105,000 was raised in a matter of weeks. I'm interested to know, because you've talked about opportunity for young people, but what would you do practically? What can government do in that situation so that people don't have to resort to crowdfunding?
Yeah, and that's... Well, I don't think we should wipe crowdfunding away, because I think that's a really, useful highlight of how crowdfunding can be used. That's in a really good way. But, I've got a similar story. I remember my drama teacher, after the theatre trip to the Everyman, Miss Lyons, saying to me, we've got you an audition at the Elliot Clark School of Dance and Drama on Saturday, but I couldn't go for it because I couldn't afford the bus fare. And it's, the ballerina, it's, going to dramas for the auditions, whatever it is. That's what I was talking to Chris about when I talk about the arm's length bodies and the people that we fund to deliver. Those people, the Arts Council and other organisations, they need to fund into those areas to ensure that, people can go for their auditions. They can go to the ballet school if they want to. That's where they need to be targeting their resources. So, I said the next Grand Slam champion or the next the Cumberbatch or whoever, it also needs to be the next prima ballerina.
Yeah.
So... Yeah.
Sir.
Jack Cadfield from National File. You mentioned the online safety bill earlier, and you said that it would both, protect vulnerable children and so on, but it would also protect free speech. But I've read the bill in its entirety myself, and there's quite a few things which seem to be very much anti-free speech. So there's a number of things where, with internet companies being forced to remove content that could have significant adverse psychological impact on individuals. Well, what would that define? And the companies also be obliged to remove disinformation and misinformation. Well, who defines this? There's quite a lot in the bill which seems to me to not protect free speech, which should and would specifically clamp down on speech that is legal to say offline, would not be able to say online, with big tech companies censoring people all the time now. Do you not think that the bill needs to have a serious rethink to make sure that we don't lose free speech in this democracy?
So I've got a few months in the window to look at the bill since I've arrived, but disinformation and misinformation, I'd find it hard to understand how anybody would object to wrongful information being removed. And your other example about harmful, so, you know, having been the Minister for Mental Health for 2 years, I understand how some people lose their life as a result of some really unpleasant stuff that takes place online, places where young people talk, and I can't go into it in detail, but that, you know, the protections of people, particularly young people, also has to be a consideration. So yeah, I'm very aware of the protections we need in place for free speech, but no one after working for 2 years in mental health is more aware than I am of how much we need to protect young people too. It's the balance. We just need to get the balance right.
Yeah. Sir, in the corner.
Good afternoon, Nadine. My name is Martin Wright, and I'm from an area you might be aware of, Mid-Bedfordshire.
Where are you, Martin? Can you just wave
here.
your hand? Oh, there you are. Hi.
I'm from Mid-Bedfordshire.
Oh, hello.
Hello there. I was delighted that you were appointed. Slightly sorry that you'd left your previous role, but I did think to myself, another culture secretary. I don't know how many culture secretaries we've had.
10 in about 10 years.
Yes, you know better than I do. And I just hope that you can maintain the relationship with your cabinet colleagues, with Boris, that you can actually carry forward what you've got in your in tray. And I just wondered if you wanted to just give some information about how you think you can hold the role longer than some of your predecessors. I hope you do.
Well, I'm going to be there for a while, but I've got some tough battles ahead, and so I think it needs a tough person to fight through those battles, which is why I think I might be there for a little while.
Okay. Some journalists at the back there. Annabelle.
Hello, I've got another online safety. Sorry, Annabelle from Politico. When do you expect to see the online safety bill on the statute books, and do you expect it to change significantly? And you talked about Angela Rayner's comments about Tory scum. If they'd been posted on Twitter and Facebook and there'd been a pylon, a harmful pylon, would you have expected Twitter and Facebook to take them down?
Gosh, sorry, the first bit of your question was when can we see the online harms bill? I think we're hoping
on the statute
I think we're hoping to bring it to Parliament in the spring. There's a bit more work to be done on it yet, now that I've arrived in the department. So, but I'm hoping to get parliamentary time next spring. If Angela Rayner had said Tory scum on Twitter, then no, I wouldn't expect Twitter to take it down. But Twitter is not Angela Rayner's leader or her boss. And so within that context, it wouldn't be appropriate. But within the context, if I sat here and said now that, you know, all Labour Party, well, I mean, it was a rant. If I ranted about what scum they were, I would very much expect to lose my job, you know, by that evening. Not a lot of time would pass before I'd been sacked, because we cannot condone that type of language. And the fact that Keir Starmer failed to condemn Angela Rayner for that language, which in itself encouraged both that hatred and the continuation of that nastiness which runs through the Labour left, then that is a problem, because they need someone. Our Prime Minister stands up against that kind of rhetoric. We need someone in the Labour Party to do it as well. And so there's a united front, and Keir Starmer has failed on that badly. He's shown himself to be weak and indecisive. To have a talk with Angela Rayner is not good enough. He publicly needed to condemn that language in order not for it to become normalised.
Yeah. Lady here.
Hello, Helena from Totnes. Thank you for your talk. I was wondering, you were talking about diversity within the BBC. It's quite interesting because we often hear, or I seem to often hear the BBC talking about diversity, so it seems almost as if your definitions are different or you're looking for different things. But specifically, I'm wondering, you said you weren't a fan of quotas, so I was wondering how you were hoping to promote lasting change without the use of something as heavy-handed as quotas, for instance.
So it's an ethos, isn't it? It's, if you look at an organisation, and I think, I don't know, it was Ofcom who did the research that showed over 50, well, certainly in 2011 I had my debate, over 50% of employees in the BBC came from a public or private school background. If it is that stark. If the data is that stark, something is wrong. So it's the ethos of the organisation. It's that group think. It's like a big liner on an ocean. It's just steaming ahead. The dial needs to be turned. And so we don't need to do it by quotas, but there are other ways we can do it, but it needs to happen.
And you have confidence that Richard Sharp and Tim Davie can do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, Richard Sharp, as chairman of the BBC, I've noticed something this morning that he's already written. He's actually tried to address this already. He's already been talking about it since he's been in post. I think Tim Davie has already made some quite encouraging comments. So it's not like I'm speaking to people who are like pushing against me, but that dialogue needs to be more constructive and more defined and sit within a framework which delivers change.
Yeah. Man in the back.
Michael Bracken from Buckinghamshire. Should the BBC be funded by a compulsory licence fee 10 years from now or 20 years from now?
Gosh, I can't look into the future. I can't say. Will the BBC still be here in 10 years? I don't know. We can't look into the future. It is a very competitive environment at the moment. You've got Amazon Prime, Netflix, and other VODs coming down the line. You know, this younger generation that are coming through, they certainly watch their television in a very different way to how my generation watched its TV. So who knows where we'll be. If you'd said to me 10 years ago, 10 years from now, everyone in your family will be watching Netflix or Amazon Prime, I would have not believed you. So who knows what will happen in another 10 years.
Okay. So.
Rob Kendrick from Lincolnshire. You spoke about the groupthink in the BBC. Just before conference, I popped into the Manchester Art Gallery, and there are notices saying they're reimagining their galleries because they're concerned, for example, that the gallery, which features 18th century pictures of the Grand Tour, is something produced by rich white men, privileged white men, and that they wanted to reimagine that. And that's purveying throughout the arts and culture sector. Is how do we challenge that groupthink within the arts and culture sector?
Yeah, and so thank you for that. I'm going to use that example.
Yeah.
What's
the answer to
the answer to the question?
You probably fund them, I suppose.
Well, and that was exactly what I was thinking when you told me. So thank you for highlighting that to me. But it goes back to my previous answer. We should not try to ignore or disown our heritage. The Grand Tours were amazing. And we shouldn't try, they should be there for people to see. It's part of our history.
Okay, any more? Peter from The Guardian.
Oh, God, here's a tough question.
It's not that tough. Thank you, Chris. Nadine, not a particularly tough question, but one I'm interested in. You're very interesting about how institutions like the BBC should be more mixed, not just in, say, in ethnic or gender terms, but all in, like, social background. But the cabinet in which you serve, I mean, since Boris Johnson's been PM, it's gone down from about 65% private school educated to about 60%, which is a lot more even than the Conservative MPs. So do you think almost that the cabinet could fall foul to the same type of groupthink? And if I could cheekily add on a second question too, you were very eloquent too about Angela Rayner's comments and the fact that Keir Starmer should have done more to stamp out this kind of nasty discourse. But your own PM is not exactly averse to that kind of stuff in the past. I mean, he faced a lot of criticism, for example, calling Muslim women in burqas letterboxes, which is in some ways quite an offensive thing to say. Do you think that was quite nasty as well? And if not, what's the difference?
So what we were talking about was online hatred, trolling, stalking. That was in a different context. And I've only heard the Prime Minister condemn that kind of normalisation of that unpleasant language. So I've only ever heard him condemn it. And by the way, this just doesn't affect Tory MPs, female largely. It affects Labour MPs as well. Rosie Duffield did not attend the Labour conference last week because she felt her safety was okay. Her safety was in danger. So it's not just female. That kind of hatred that we were talking about comes from a vein in the left of the party, the Labour Party, and it came with Corbyn. It's still there with Corbyn, and it affects all of us. And that's what I was talking about. And in terms of the cabinet, which is improved, as I said, I don't have anything against. I have no opinion on private schools or public schools or where anyone went to school. All I'm saying is that people who come from that background can still have the jobs, just not all of the jobs, and they have to be more evenly distributed. We have to ensure that people from my kind of background and other backgrounds have the same opportunities to sit in the cabinet. I'm there, I want more people like me there, and I want those people to have the opportunity to get there.
And to boost those numbers, you have to allow more for a background where the opportunity wasn't so great, basically.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, if you'd said to me when I was a kid that you're going to be sat in the cabinet one day, I mean, I'd have thought you were mad, not me.
Chappie.
Hi, Dan Marr from Cheshire. Whilst we've had a real success in the last 5-10 years of British TV, it seems to have been at the expense of the cinema industry we've got here. And it's been very much a closed shop for, say, the last 20 years, to the fact Christopher Nolan, one of the most successful directors in the last 20 years, couldn't get a job in British cinema at all. How do we change that and push that kind of fantastic sort of direction and writing into British cinema and really revitalise it for the coming age?
So I understand where you're coming from, but I have to disagree with your fundamental point. You know, we've got 40,000. The film industry in the UK is looking for 40,000 skilled people. So if anyone wants a job in film, hand in your CV on the way out. Our industry, our film industry has grown massively, not least because we funded with £500 million. In fact, it goes up to about, I think it's about 2 billion in total, the packages we put into to keep those cameras turning throughout the pandemic. Yeah. I'm going to see Mothering Sunday soon. You know, we have the best film industry in the world, and it's doing really well. So on the premise, the basis of your argument, I can't agree. We're going from strength to strength. We're going to continue doing that. They've been well funded by the government, not just to keep the cameras rolling, but in a reinsurance scheme against COVID as well. Our film industry is second to none. And
just taking a step back, Nadine Dorries, you got this big job. How are you going to judge yourself in 2 years' time? What does success look like for you in 2 years' time?
So, gosh, I haven't thought about that. So I'm just so busy doing the minute stuff at the moment. I hope 2 years from now that you will see across the UK more initiatives, more programmes, more ability from kids from poor backgrounds to play music, to dance ballet, to act on a stage, to go into a museum so that they know museums are places that people like them can go to. Because that, for me, is what levelling up is about. So that's the very least I want to achieve in 2 years. There's lots of other things I want to do. But at the very least, I'd like to know that a kid from a back street in Scunthorpe, you know, is part of an acting class and wants to become, you know, a famous actor. That's where I judge myself.
Nadine Dorries, thank you.
Thank you.
1 second. Well, I'll be back tomorrow with another live episode of Chopper's Politics, when I'll be talking to the man who used to have your job, Nadine, the former Culture Secretary and new party co-chairman, Oliver Dowden. Thank you again to my guest today, Nadine Dorries, and of course to you for listening and for watching, and those listening and watching at home. If you want to watch my conversation with the Culture Secretary back, you can do so on Telegraph's YouTube channel. And of course, you can listen again by searching for Chopper's Politics wherever you normally find your podcasts. To keep on top of everything else the politicians are saying in front of camera and behind the scenes, please go to sign up to my newsletter called Chopper's Politics. It's straight to your email inbox every lunchtime with my best idea of what the hell's going on in British politics. It's my best guess, honestly. Go to telegraph.co.uk/newsletters. And of course, please do always buy a copy of the Daily Telegraph. You won't regret it. Until next time, though, cheerio!